I had a seizure on my way to work. Collapsed in the street. Foaming. Twitching. A stranger held my hand while the ambulance came. The hospital called my wife. She said she was boarding a cruise. We'll come visit when we're back in 2 weeks. I could have died. She left anyway. When they came home, I was gone. The house was leased. The account was empty. And the safe, the one they never knew existed, had vanished with me. Tell us your name and where you're watching from in the comment section. We'll love to give you a shout out in our next video. I don't remember the moment I collapsed. Only the screech of tires. A shout. Then darkness. They told me later it happened on the crosswalk, half a block from the bus stop. I'd felt it building, apparently. Paused. Clutched a pole. Then I went down, twitching in front of strangers on their morning commute. My phone flew from my coat pocket and skidded across the pavement. Some kind soul picked it up, unlocked it with my thumb, and called my wife. I imagine how it must have sounded to her. Ma'am, your husband had a seizure. He's being taken to Spokane General. You should come now. Her response? We're preparing for a cruise. We leave in a few hours. We'll come visit when we're back in 2 weeks. That's what the attending doctor told me later. He had that look, the one you get from people who pity you. I'd only just regained consciousness. Tubes in my arm, tongue chewed bloody. I asked if anyone had come. No, he said gently. We called your emergency contact. She said you were traveling soon. I laughed. Not loudly. Just one short breath of disbelief. 3 days in the hospital. I had more conversations with the nurses than I'd had with my wife in the last month. One of them brought me a banana when she realized I hadn't eaten all morning. Another adjusted my floor without me asking. A third told me to take care of myself, because not everyone will. No one brought flowers. No one brought clothes. They finally let me out on a Thursday. I was still dizzy when I stepped out into the sunlight, a paper bag of meds tucked under my arm. It felt like the world had moved on without me. I took the 43 bus home. Still had my keys. The house was dark when I stepped in. Quiet. The air smelled like the lemon floor cleaner she liked to use when she was preparing for guests. But there were no guests. Just the note on the kitchen counter. Cruise dock info and emergency contacts. Back on the 14th. Love you. Love you. 2 words, surrounded by highlighters and post-it notes, and a packing list still left out like it was something sacred. Sunscreen. Phone chargers. Matching cruise outfits. I looked around the kitchen and realized she hadn't left a single thing for me. No soup in the fridge. No note of concern. She'd left me like she leaves the lights off in rooms she doesn't use. A second note sat beside the fridge magnet. Trash day is Tuesday. The neighbor has the spare key. Mail will pile up if no one checks. Mail. Trash. Not husband. Not hospital. I sat at the table for an hour, maybe 2, just breathing. It felt like every inhale was a choice. Every exhale was a grief I hadn't let myself feel until now. I wasn't angry, not in the way people imagine rage. It was quieter, thicker, a silence that sat in my chest like cement. This wasn't about the seizure. This was about every empty dinner plate. Every night, she turned away from me in bed. Every time she looked through me, not at me. And something clicked. If I had died that day, she would have gone on that cruise. She would have toasted at dinner, posted pictures of herself in swimsuits with captions like, finally relaxing, and come home to a house full of sympathy cards. She would have played the grieving wife without ever having to grieve me. But I didn't die, and I wasn't going to play the grateful survivor. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I got up, opened my laptop, checked my accounts, downloaded the statements. Every withdrawal, every unexplained charge. That cruise, she paid for it out of our joint savings. The emergency fund I'd built. The one she'd rolled her eyes at when I said, we should be careful with money this year. I started packing the next morning. Not just my clothes, my files, my safe, my passwords, my tools. I booked a storage unit and moved the most important things there. Disconnected my number. Left behind everything that didn't matter. I wasn't angry. I was done. By the time she returned, I was nothing but a ghost in her vacation slideshow. She expected me to be home. That's what gets me. She walked through that door, dragging her pink suitcase with the broken wheel, still wearing her cruise lanyard like a trophy. I watched from a block away, parked across the street in my truck, windows tinted, just to see her face when the key didn't work. She tried it twice, frowned, Tried the other one on her chain, the old spare. Still nothing. Then she looked up, confused, like maybe she was in the wrong place. Same house, same porch, same potted plants I used to water. But it wasn't her home anymore. I'd had the locks changed 3 days earlier. New lease signed. New tenant moved in the night before. Travel nurse from Montana named Erin. Mid-30s. Keeps to herself. I left her a bottle of wine and a full rent credit for month 1. All I wanted in return was for her to be home by the time my wife got back. She was. My wife stood on that porch, ringing the bell like she was owed something. Erin opened the door in scrubs, polite but tired, like someone who doesn't have time for drama. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw the shift. Confusion, then indignation, then something colder, panic, maybe. She stepped back from the door, pulled out her phone, and called me. I watched it buzz on the passenger seat next to me. Just her name. No photo. I'd deleted that months ago. She didn't leave a voicemail. I already knew what it would say. Where are you? Why is someone else in our house? What is going on? But here's the thing. She didn't ask that when I was in the hospital. She didn't ask anything then. Just told the doctor she was boarding a cruise. We'll come see him when we're back. Like my seizure was an errand she'd get around to eventually. Now she wanted answers? Now she wanted me? Too late. She sent a text next. Did you move out? What is happening? Then, is this a joke? Please tell me this is a joke. And then finally, hours later, you're scaring me. That one almost made me laugh. Because I was never the scary one. I was the quiet one. The one who apologized for taking up space. The one who made breakfast even when she didn't come to bed. The one who sent anniversary flowers she forgot to acknowledge. But now I was quiet in a different way. Now I was gone. She tried the bank next. That's how I know she still believed I'd come back. She thought maybe it was just a tantrum. A phase. That I'd taken a little me time, and she'd ride it out like she always did when I got tired or upset or, God forbid, vocal. But this time I had receipts. Literal ones. See, the joint account was gone too. Closed. Legally. I pulled my half with documentation. Moved it into an individual account 2 days after I got home from the hospital. Everything else, the safe, the important papers, the passwords, we'd always kept shared, or so she said. But funny how shared only meant hers to use. I took it all. What did I leave behind? Her outfits, her vitamins, her dog-eared romance novels stacked by the bed, the photo frame by the dresser, us at Niagara Falls 5 years ago. I left it face down. Not broken, not smashed, just turned over. Like a page in a chapter one didn't want to reread. She showed up at my brother's house next. That's when I stopped watching. Because that woman doesn't like being embarrassed, and if there's one thing she hates more than being left, it's not having someone to blame. She banged on his door for 10 straight minutes before she gave up. He told me about it later. Said she stood there with mascara under her eyes and salt still in her hair, looking less like a wife and more like a storm someone forgot to name. She told him I was being irrational, that I was abandoning everything. He looked her in the eye and said, he almost died, and you went on vacation. She didn't have an answer for that. She never does when you speak plain. I sent her one thing, for days later. No return address. Just a manila envelope with a typed label that read, for your records. Inside, the hospital bill, timestamped. A printout of the doctor's call log. Attempted contact, no follow-up. Screenshot of her text that morning. Can't talk now. Boarding soon. Son and see her calling. Red heart. Printout of the cruise itinerary. Photo of me in the hospital bed, eyes closed, wires everywhere. Taken by a nurse who offered when I told her what happened. A sticky note on top. I made it, but the man you knew didn't. That was it. No signature. No return address. No explanation. I didn't know her any. People keep asking if I'm okay. I am. But I'm not the same man who paid for her to tan on a cruise while I lay half dead in a sterile room alone. That man would have forgiven her. That man would have cried when she came home. That man would have accepted the apology she was never going to offer. But me? I let her come back to nothing. And I slept like a stone that night. They didn't even look for me at first. They looked for what I took. That's how I knew I'd done it right. She and her sister came back to the house with grocery bags and a folding cart, probably planning to make dinner reset the place, spin a story. Something about his stress or a midlife thing. She thought she could smooth this over with pasta and good lighting. Then they saw the front door lock had been changed. Then they saw the house wasn't hers anymore. Then they realized. He left. He actually left. That's when the panic kicked in. She must have called me a dozen times that night. No voicemail. Just hanging up and redialing. As if persistence would break through the wall of silence. She texted my brother again. Where is he? He's scaring me. This isn't funny. No response. Then she tried guilt. Can we please talk like adults? Then shame. You're acting unstable. This isn't okay. Then control. I'm calling the bank. I'm calling the lawyer. You can't just disappear. But I could. Because I'd already disappeared in our marriage years ago. Now it was just literal. The safe was the thing that really rattled them. It wasn't where it had always been, behind the dresser, under the floorboard. Because that was the decoy. She thought she knew where I kept everything. And for years, she did. Because for years, I believed in transparency, in honesty, in sharing your life with the person you love. Until I realized I was the only one doing the sharing. So I built a second one. Not a big safe. Just a steel lockbox bolted behind a drywall panel under the stairs. I installed it on a Sunday afternoon while she was at brunch with her cousin. Bottomless mimosas and complaints about how hard it was to be the planner in the relationship. She never noticed the patch in the wall. She never asked what I did with my afternoons when I wasn't fixing things for her. Inside that safe, not money, not jewelry, just documentation. Photos, scans, letters, notes to myself, text threads where she dismissed my health concerns, printouts of her cruise confirmation, pulled from her email after she left me in the ICU. There was even a letter I never meant to send, dated 6 months before the seizure. I wrote it after she laughed at me in front of her friends when I forgot the name of a co-worker's wife. You're getting old, she said, sipping wine. Maybe you should check for dementia. I laughed too, tried to play along, but something inside me nodded. Tight. That night, I opened a Word doc and wrote everything I couldn't say aloud. You don't see me anymore. You only see what I failed to be. It was 2 pages long. I never sent it. I added it to the safe. The safe went with me when I left. It's in a storage unit now, under a different name, in a facility she's never heard of. And the documents? I made 12 packets, bound and labeled. 1 for my lawyer, 1 for hers, 1 for the woman who owns the yoga studio where she teaches her Tuesday class. She calls herself a mental wellness advocate. 1 for the HR department at her job, just in case she tries to spin the story first. And yes, 1 for the admin of her cruise group on Facebook. Because if you're going to post bikini pics and beachside quotes about finding peace, you'd better be honest about what you left behind to get there. Her reaction to the missing safe was theatrical. She filed a police report, told them I'd stolen shared property, said I had concerning behaviors. They called me. I was calm, polite, direct. Everything I took was mine or legally divided. There was no theft, just the end of generosity. The officer paused. Then he said, "She claimed you might be a danger to yourself." And I laughed. The kind of dry, stunned laugh you give when someone throws a knife and calls it an act of concern. She left me alone after a medical emergency. I said. She went on vacation. There are records. Another pause. We'll note it, he said. No action on our end. She stopped calling after that. That's when I knew she was really scared, not of me, of what I knew. Because the only people who fear evidence are the ones with something to lose. A week passed. Then 2. Then I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was her sister. Can we talk? She's not doing well. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not doing well. You mean now? Now that the lie is crumbling? Now that the house she never cleaned is no longer hers? Now that the bank account is dry and the sympathy is thinning? Now she wants compassion? Where was compassion when I lay in a hospital bed, blinking at fluorescent lights, wondering if I was going to wake up alone? Oh, right. She was in Cabo. I didn't reply. Instead, I mailed 1 more packet. To myself. To my new address. Just to remind me that it happened. That I didn't imagine it. That survival sometimes looks like a man walking away from the home he built to preserve what's left of his spirit. The packet sits on my kitchen counter now. Unopened. I know what's inside. I just like seeing my name on it. Because for the first time in a long time, it feels like I belong to me. I didn't scream. I didn't block her number and post cryptic status updates. I didn't rage or cry or leave my ring on the counter like a TV drama. I just filed the paperwork. Quiet, clean, clinical, like a surgeon cutting out something that had rotted too long. The divorce packet went out on a Tuesday. Overnight delivery. Return receipt requested. I sent it to her mother's house. Because after the tenant changed the locks, my ex moved back in with the woman who raised her to believe silence is a virtue and submission is love. Fitting. I imagine her opening it. In her childhood bedroom. Surrounded by trophies she still brags about. Probably thought I'd never dare. She underestimated me. But then again, she always had. People think divorce is dramatic. Ours was just efficient. I had the timeline. I had the receipts. I had the medical records, bank statements, proof of abandonment, emotional neglect, and financial misappropriation. What did she have? A suntan and a suitcase full of cruise photos. And the growing realization that the man she called fragile had been watching her closer than she ever watched him. She tried to stall, tried to talk it out, told my lawyer I was making a mistake, said we'd been under stress. I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to justify leaving someone who let me nearly die alone while she sipped margaritas on a ship. Let the papers speak for themselves. She dragged her feet, claimed she needed time to get her finances in order. My lawyer sent her a spreadsheet, color-coded, of everything she'd spent from our joint account over the last 6 months. Thousands of dollars on the cruise, the spa, the matching outfits, the excursions. Time to get your finances in order. You already did, sweetheart. With my money. She went quiet after that. Filed a counterclaim demanding alimony. My lawyer countered with evidence. She was employed full-time, living rent-free with her mother, and had depleted joint funds on leisure while her husband was medically incapacitated. The judge didn't even blink. The final hearing was remote. She didn't show her face. Just her lawyer. Polished. Measured. The kind of man who probably used words like amicable and irreconcilable while billing $400 an hour to clean up someone else's mess. I showed up in a clean shirt and clear conscience. The judge asked if I had anything to say before finalizing. I said one sentence. I gave everything I had. Then I gave it again. I'm done giving. He nodded. Bang of the gavel. Just like that. I wasn't her husband anymore. And God, it felt like freedom. She texted me the next day. After everything we've been through, you couldn't even say goodbye? I stared at the screen for a long time. And then I typed. I did say goodbye. You just didn't notice when I said it. Delete. Rewrite. You said goodbye first, when you left me in a hospital bed. Delete. Rewrite. In the end, I didn't reply at all. Because some messages are meant to hang in the air unanswered, like smoke after a fire. And some people deserve silence more than closure. The weird part? It wasn't satisfying. There was no final gotcha. No dramatic confrontation. No explosion. Just quiet. Like a room that's finally been aired out after years of something rotting under the floorboards. But I'll tell you what was satisfying. The night I sat in my new apartment, lights low, cheap takeout on the counter, no one judging me for the mess. And I opened my laptop to see the email confirming the divorce was final. No strings. No debts. No more explaining myself to someone who never listened. Just me. Breathing. And knowing I would never again apologize for surviving. They called it a seizure. But it felt like something else. A rupture. A warning. A line drawn in the middle of my life, before and after. Before, I was the man who reminded her to drink water. Who filled her tires, fixed the porch light, paid the taxes, and shrunk a little more every time she rolled her eyes when I spoke. After, I was gone. Not dead, but gone. That's what haunts people. Not the ones who die. The ones who leave while still alive and don't come back. A month after the papers were final, her friend Danielle emailed me. Said she was heartbroken to see what happened. Said she had no idea. Said she was on my side. I didn't write back. 2 weeks later, her cousin Julie reached out. Just wanted to say, I saw the way she treated you, and I hope you're doing better. Again, I said nothing. Because I didn't need their retroactive loyalty. I remembered every dinner party where they laughed along with her. Every story she told about how sensitive he is, how I take things too seriously. They all clinked glasses. I washed dishes. And now they wanted to tell me I was right? Too late. I was done collecting sympathy from the people who watched her erase me in real time. I got a job in a different city. Contract work. Not glamorous, but quiet. Predictable. The kind of job that ends when the day ends. I started going to bed before midnight. Started cooking for one, and realizing that was enough. I bought a used pickup. Named her Grace. She starts on the first try every time. I found an old camera in a pawn shop and started taking pictures of things I never used to notice. Birds on power lines. Broken fences. People holding hands at intersections. I wasn't bitter. Just awake. And being awake, after years of sleepwalking through a marriage I mistook for love, felt like a rebellion. Sometimes, I still think about the man who collapsed on that sidewalk. The one who was so afraid of being abandoned, he didn't notice he already had been. If I could speak to him now, I'd say this. Let her go. Let the silence stretch. Let the house go, and the name, and the version of you she kept trying to sand down into something soft enough to ignore. You're not here to be tolerable. You're here to be whole. I heard she finally moved out of her mother's place. Tried to throw a birthday dinner. Half the guests didn't show. A friend of mine said she was telling people I ghosted her, that she came home and he was just gone. I smiled at that. Because it's true. I didn't leave her. I vanished. On purpose. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't fire. It's absence. It's walking out of the cage they never even saw as a prison and locking it behind you. It's rebuilding a life so peaceful, so honest, so unrecognizably your own, that the people who hurt you have no choice but to stare into their reflection and ask, why didn't I see it coming? She still has the photos from the cruise. Still posts them. But everyone who looks at them now knows what they cost. Because I made sure of that. 12 packets. 12 truths. And a man who refuses to be buried while he's still breathing. If you made it this far, thank you. Would you have stayed? Or would you have disappeared, too? Tell me in the comments. And if you're ready for more stories like this, subscribe. I have plenty more names to cross off the list.